Hey everyone, I'm back with a new video. Today is a long-awaited Blender Sollumz tutorial. So if these are your first steps as a GTA 5 modder or FiveM modder in particular, this is exactly the video you should be looking for as a Blender user. If you're a 3ds Max enjoyer like myself, I will be showing you the difference between the two. So if you're migrating from Max to Blender, from GIMS to Sollumz, this video would also be really helpful to you because I had issues when I was trying to work between the two, between the Sollumz and GIMS. Some parts weren't exactly obvious to me, and I will be highlighting those parts. So I hope this video will be useful for you as well if you're trying to transfer from Max to Blender or just implement Sollumz in your just daily basis work. If you're a server owner, make sure to not miss our latest tactical weapon pack for your SWAT team on our server or for your police department. If you're running a cyberpunk server, we have a sci-fi pack as well of really cool weapons. We have some pets you can have a look at as well. So really something to look at. And yeah, let's dive into the topic of this tutorial. First things first, you have to download Blender. Link is going to be in the description. Literally just type download Blender. For Sollumz as well, literally just type download Sollumz, then you go to latest release and just download sollumz.zip. You'll find it in your downloads folder, and then that zip, you don't even have to open the archive. You can literally just drag and drop to just somewhere you will find. Literally I have a folder called GTA 5 plugins. Then you launch your Blender. You go to edit, preferences, add-ons. So basically you install every plugin like that. You click install an add-on. Then you just navigate to the same folder where you drag and dropped it. In my case, GTA 5 plugins. You just select the zip. Now you just search Sollumz and make sure you have that checked here. After it's done, make sure to restart your Blender, or in my experiences, some things may work incorrectly. We are going to be using this basic chair as our example of adding models into the game. I just don't want to add cubes. So when installing something from Sketchfab, you will always have the textures, right? And right off the bat, read emissive, metallic, and AO textures. In GTA, we only use albedo, which is your diffuse map, basic color, normal map, DirectX, we should be using. So we will edit this one to fit DirectX. For GTA 5, and roughness, we can use it as a specular map. We will use it in this tutorial, but usually I just generate a specular map for my diffuse map in Photoshop as well as normal map. Alright. Another reason why I took this chair as an example is because I want to show you guys how to work with metallic textures, how to set up metal shader for GTA 5, reflectivity, bumpiness, and etc. This is also why I just highlighted to use the texture maps. Alright, so let's start actually tackling the Sollumz plugin and start implementing things into GTA 5 or FiveM. First things first, as soon as you open Blender and spawn any model, you find that already some hierarchy has been created. This is very counterintuitive, so if we go Shift-A, Mesh Cube by adding cube, already we spawned something with parent-child hierarchy, which is like a little misleading, but that's just how Blender does things. So this green figure is mesh data. So that's basically vertices, polygons, the geometry itself, while this hierarchy is actually kind of object properties, which are position, rotation, and etc. Why is this misleading? Because, well, in Max, when you create a box, well, obviously, it's just a box. There is no hierarchy to drag it from. You just spawn a box. But Blender a bit overcomplicates things in that regard, especially if you're either a starter or migrating from Max, because you start thinking, well, how do I drag it out? What do I do? But you actually can't. It's not even hierarchy. You can just forget about it. So this will be, as soon as you see the sign, it's kind of like the end of your hierarchy. It was really misleading for me at the start. Also, another thing you should take into consideration as a Blender starter, or if you're migrating from Max, let me hide my chair, is that Blender puts everything into your scene collection hierarchy. So again, to me, it's not really comfortable to put everything within one window, because if we go to modifier, add modifier like array, whatever, it puts that here as well. So if you add material, it puts it here as well. If you have 20 materials, 20 bones, basically you just have a huge... It all just goes into the sea. I don't know why it's like that, but you guys have to get used to that everything gets put into your hierarchy of your object. And this hierarchy is basically the latest one you should really care about. And everything about will actually be child to parent relationship, while this basically just 2 in 1, 3 in 1, right? This is just a single solid object. You should treat it like a box in Mac that just there, you know, without anything, without actually any hierarchy. That's just how Blender works. Not necessary complication if you ask me, but you get used to it if you want to proceed into adding further hierarchy with Sollumz right now. So what was this half rant, half explanation about? This is what we're really gonna need in understanding how to convert things to GTA format, to YGR format, to create a drawable for Rage engine, meaning GTA 5. Otherwise, I think it will be harder for you to understand what we're gonna be doing later on in the video, which is right now. Because right now we're finally starting to tackle the Sollumz. So let's open the Sollumz pop-up by pressing N and then go to Sollumz tools. And then really at start, before you know like how everything works here in this menu, you really have to think about each click, all right? Really like start figuring out where you click before you click it, all right? So what we're working on with geometry, with the visual part in our scene, right? Just raw geometry, nothing else. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna go to drawables. Okay, what's our next step? What we're really doing right here, right? You just have to remember the steps. They're going to be the same every single time. So at first, really start to think about them. So we need to create Rage format models. So create drawable object is the first window, literally right here, that we need. So this is the next part, which got me kind of confused as a starter. So I want to highlight that as well. So inside create drawable object, in order to create it, we have to convert it to drawable. But what it does when you click it with your model selected to convert it is actually just creating children to parent relationships. So conversion in my head means like destroying the previous one, creating something new, and we just established the hierarchy. So for example, what we could have done from the start, if we deleted from the hierarchy, we could have just create drawable in our scene and just drag it ourselves. So we didn't really convert anything into anything. Same way when we go into GIMS, we just go to create object, models, create model, GIMS model, and then we just drag and drop in the hierarchy. We didn't convert nothing, we just established the relationship between the dummy and the geometry. But so it got me kind of confused. And the next button we have to click is convert to drawable model, and you will find this when you click to drawable, it just, well, becomes drawable. So you don't have to click it as well. If it's none, you can just make it drawable yourself. And again, it doesn't convert anything into nothing. What it should be called is apply GTA modifier, because if you see here those LOD distance, etc., it's what this here in GIMS in model. So the equivalent of this here is just assigning GTA modifier. Give me a second. Game mesh modifier. So I'm not certain. It confuses me a little, but I hope it brings you guys better explanation of how things work here, what buttons actually do. And if you're a Mac user, that should make it easier for you to understand why we're pressing those buttons. Basically, just select your object, go to object properties, and find the Sollumz tab. This is like everything you really need to do by selecting each hierarchy to figure out what goes where, right? This is a general advice. All right, so now that we think what's the kind of next task on our list, so we have to texture it. So we go to next tab, shader tools, and right here it's pretty straightforward. You go to material tab, we have no materials applied. So quick explanation: default shader if you just have the diffuse, the albedo map, just the raw color, base color. Cut out if you want transparency, if you have alpha channel in your diffuse as well. If you want to work with vehicles, just there's a short search bar here. Let's just go vehicle. You You have visual shaders. You work with bad, you go with bad shaders, weapon shaders, right? But the most, if you want to highlight something, it's emissive, right? The light without the light source, fake light, some call. But the most common one, and I'd say the coolest one, is normal spec shader. It allows you to use normal map, specular map, and your color map, diffuse map. Obviously very optimized, good looking, etc. No need to explain. So you create the shader material, and it automatically assigns it to your object because, well, there's none. It's the only one, so it assigns it automatically. So shader is a combination of shader parameters without the textures. So first, let's establish the textures that we downloaded from our Sketchfab. Our normal map specifically states that it's OpenGL, but GTA 5 uses DirectX format, so in order to convert it properly, we have to go to Photoshop and reverse our channel, green channel, under channels by pressing Ctrl-I, so it looks like that. So we go back and just, so this is like clearly you see how it changed. It flipped one coordinate, and now just don't think about it too much. It's a way to make your normal map work properly. This is as much understanding as you need as a beginner. Just remember DirectX format. Now let's just save our textures with proper naming. It's just a good practice, right? So I usually go with something like tutorial, project names, and like what it is, like first share, and then 01. So it was second version, we go 02, and etc. Right? Now, the tricky part, we have to save it not as PNG, JPEG, but as DDS format. It's a special format that GTA uses, so DDS. And you save it as DDS with DXT1 compression if you don't have, if it's not transparent, if it's not glass or whatever. In most cases, you just use DXT1. If it's transparent, you just use DXT5. Those are different, or BC3 in this version of the plugin. It's texture compression. It's needed for optimization purpose. So you just save it. If you don't have that plugin, of course I'm gonna link a link in the description. You literally just download it and save it as DDS like I just shown you. But you could just do it in the internet. There's literally type JPEG to GDS conversion online, and that's it. My normal and specular map, I just name the same, but at the end I type N. This is also how Rockstar does it. And of course I save them as DXT1 or DC1 compression as well. Now my roughness, I'm gonna take as a specular map and save it as S at the end. Alright, I hope that was straightforward. Now that we have textures saved in the correct format, meaning DDS, let's assign it to our object. And it's pretty straightforward as well, as we're within material part as it is while assigning our shader. So you just scroll down and you go to Sollumz, texture parameters. So there you go, diffuse sampler, bump sampler, spec sampler. We're interested in our diffuse map. Let's just go to where we just saved them. And here we have our PNG and DDS. Of course we need our DDS. It's easy to tell what's what because we named them accordingly, and for normal as for specular. We need the diffuse map. Here you go. And now we go for the bump map and the specular map. I don't know why Sollumz doesn't redirect automatically where it just took the textures from, so that we have to do that again. And we have to do it again. Redirect to the same directory. And we're gonna embed all the textures within the model. Now Sollumz actually provides really comfortable tool. So if you want to embed all the texture within one material, you click set all textures embedded. If you had multiple materials, you could click set all materials embedded. So all the materials you had here would be embedded. And remove all embedded, set all materials unembedded, does the same, but just unembeds them. So it actually, instead of clicking that, I just could save myself 2 clicks and just go to set textures embedded, and an object selected. You have to select it, of course. Set textures embedded. There we go. Now, probably the last part with section here. If we go to UV editing with selecting our model, we see that it's actually UV edited correctly. It's actually there. But if we go to our modeling, well, doesn't exactly look like it should be looking. So if you're running into the same issue, you just go to shading window, and within all this web, the nodes, you should just go to the UV map and delete the UV map 0. So now if we go back to modeling, we now have it all mapped correctly. I don't know why it like that automatically, but we shouldn't care too much. It's just simple fix, and we can proceed with working with further tasks here. Now a little recap. We're done with geometry. We're done with establishing GTA format. Now let's establish the collision. So how do we do that? Literally open the same window, and what's the next tab we have here? Collisions. Pretty easy, just think on what you're doing. You select the collisions, and before we go there, let's create our collision. So in our case, we're just gonna copy the geometry we have of the chair. It's called BVH collision, so the geometry that exactly follows the geometry of your model. You should optimize it with automatic tools. For example, Pro Optimizer in Max is what I always do. But what is even more optimized is creating primitive collisions. But in our case, let's just, if you have a simple object, just go Shift D to duplicate, then right click so it stands in the same place. So for example, if I go to GZ, you can see they're in the same place. You can also hide them by pressing H, stands for hide. Now hotkey is something that's really great about Blender. So now as you see, we have several. One is hidden, one is not. So let this be our model, and this be our collision. Obviously, they should be on the same coordinates. That's why I duplicate in the same place, because the collision is exactly there where the model is, where the geometry's visual part is. So let's actually rename this all into Sollumz tutorial first chair or 1. This is how we're gonna spawn it in game. The highest hierarchy is under which name you're spawning it in game. Model, let's call it the same but high at the end because it's high poly. Actually, this is the model. It's high. And this is going to be called collision. Naming doesn't matter that much, but I just like to keep things clean. I don't mind myself doing it 7 times. This is what you should be going for. Simple naming, high for model, COL for collision, call collision, and the highest hierarchy is under which name you're going to be spawning it. Should be pretty straightforward. And as you see here, like I showed you earlier, Blender just puts everything into hierarchy, makes your brain melt at the beginning, but you get used to it. Alright, let's stop talking and actually make our collision that we named collision. So previously what we did for drawables, we go to drawables, create or convert, and you could do the same here by pressing create bounds and create bound, so like convert button again, do the same thing like with drawable, but actually even a quicker way. There's a shortcut to shortcut. You can select your geometry and go to V, convert to composite, and it just created your hierarchy right here, even a more complex one for a BVH collision. Now let me break this down a bit further. Now this is where Blender makes it a bit awkward as well, if you ask me, with all this complex hierarchy. Now the first hierarchy is now another dummy, equivalent of spawning composite collision through GIMS. So what we just did with pressing convert in Blender is doing that move here, alright? Creating relationship as well again. So we just drag and drop this here. Now the next hierarchy, called BVH, this is where we have our composite flags. This is where you also can set up physics for fragment objects. What do composite flags do? So it's set up for basic flags already as it is, but they're very self-explanatory. It's to what the collision should react. Well, weapon reacts to weapon, dynamic reacts to paths, animal to animal, cover makes it cover if you press Q, and vehicle makes it react to vehicles, right? Pretty straightforward, and it works, set up them automatically if you click it. Now this is where you can make it primitive collisions, but we're gonna leave it BVH for the purpose of this tutorial. Now, this window is the equivalent of assigning mesh modifier. So I kind of like, we see all this here again, right? So I kind of like how Max splits it versus Blender just dumps all into one spot. I just find it more comforting, maybe just because I'm used to Max. Please write what you think in the comments. And let's continue, because the next hierarchy is where we should set up our materials, because I remind you, we copied the geometry, the visual part. We still have the alt texture applied, but the collision shouldn't have any texture. It is invisible. You just bump into it as a player or as a bullet. So you can just delete this material, or again, Blender provides really comforting tools, because in the collisions, the next video, create collision material. Pretty straightforward. And again, what we're looking for, can create bricks now, so we can just, let's try and find metal. Well, we see our metal. Select literally any small, medium, and large. And you can see it create another one. What we could have done is go to tab to edit mode, 3 to polygons, select all, go to metal solid and press assign. But again, Blender provides better options. You can just go convert, clear, and create collision material. So it deletes everything that was from your visual part that you copied and just assigns whatever was selected. So it's pretty one click, right? It's what Blender does. It saves time and has fancy hotkeys. It's what it's actually good at. So no joke, it's really cool. And in here, within our latest hierarchy, you can go to another Sollumz tab, and this is where you set up your room ID and collision flags for your material, because we're in material window. Now this one kind of makes sense. And convert button in this case actually makes what it does, because it destroys the previous and creates new one, unlike the convert button in, well, you get what I mean. The equivalent of collision flags here is if we create GIMS material right here, and we have these flags here, as well as room ID. Now, what do they do? Let's explain them a bit. Stairs, if your collision is a stairs, it will apply the animation. We don't need that. Not climbable, we're gonna assign it. Just, I want to show you guys in game what it does. You just can't climb, jump through, or over the object by pressing space. It will not pad will not climb. My favorite one is no decals, so your bullets will not be shown or your object. Sometimes you need that when you have like a fence or something similar. Also for optimization purpose. No ragdoll. Too stiff for the player is when you're climbing on it on foot, you will go into ragdoll and will not be able to climb it actually on steep mountain. Well, it's, again, all of those are self-explanatory. Really cool one is no cam collision. If you're running Rockstar editor and you don't want your cam bumping into some glass or wall, you just click no cam collision and it ignores your camera but not your pad or bullets or whatever, everything else. Right there, self-explanatory. And room IDs are needed for interiors. We're not going to tackle it in this video, but in the next one. And guess what, guys? We can just press N and we are done here. We actually created everything we needed in Blender for our object to export it into the game. Last part, I actually promised to show you how to set up the metal material. And if you go select your mesh and go to Sollumz, go to value parameters, which is actually shader parameters. What you see here is your values. So wetness is how wet it's during the rain. Bumpiness is the intensity of your bump map, of your normal map actually. So let's just make it 105. I mean 1.5. 1 is by default. Specular intensity is how intense your spec map is. Pretty straightforward. Let's make it for metal. Let's make it 1.5. Specular fall off. And by the way, all of those are not native to GTA. You can just literally Google specular fall off. Specular Fresnel is pretty straightforward for any engine or game. So let's make this 180. And for now, let's make it 151 or 051. So it's also this is something you should play with. If bump in a normal map is too much, you see too much on your object, just make it smaller. Same with intensity, and The last part I need to cover here is vertex colors. It's something GTA really cares about, is how your object behaves, reacts to weather changes and time of day changes. Brighter vertex color means brighter object, darker means darker. It's pretty straightforward in that regard. So in Max, in order to create your, I remind you, vertex colors, you go to vertices, and select the color of your vertex. Pretty straightforward. RGB. Now for Blender, you go to your mesh, you go to mesh data, you go to color attributes, you hit plus, you go, you press here, you go to color, and you select it from, go to RGB and you select it from 0 to 1. Okay, this is somewhere I think Blender loses a bit. But this is just, I just want you guys to know how to select the vertex color, because at my time I was trying to find it a lot. And I hope you guys, it will be easier for you guys to find it after watching this tutorial. That was for Mac users in particular. Now, at this time, I don't lie, we actually finished with all our geometry part. Now, what we need to establish is metadata of your object. What does it mean? So, you have your geometry, you have your collision, but how do you explain the game the properties of your object? This is what you need meta files for. So this time, instead of selecting your model or your collision in particular, you have to select like your highest hierarchy, go to N, and go to the last tab because it's the last step. And here you go to ytyp. You create ytyp, you name it, let's name it just the same tutorial. First, chair, we can do something like arc type, right? Some people like to do that. I usually just name it the same. It doesn't matter, but it will be easier for you guys to understand if you name things for what they are, even though you basically say archetype. But that's all right. Now with your highest hierarchy selected, go auto create from selected. Criminally easily, Blender allows you to create your Y type, your metadata for your object, because you actually finished. You could just export right now, but before we do that, let's dive a bit deeper into what it does, because we do want the understanding, not the remembering things, right? Understanding before remembering. Archetype tab, what does it do? So if you are using OpenIV or your Max user, this is exactly this tab. All right, special attribute, texture dictionary, etc, etc. Blender always hashes values for OpenIV. Let's hope not specifically, but in order to unhash it, you can go open your CodeWalker, go to tools, again 1, 2, 3, and it will tell you the hash. You can just search it. If you're a newbie and you don't understand what's going on, you don't need to. You're not working with Max. So you don't need to work with OpenIV at all with Sollumz. This is the neat part, kind of. Next step is extensions. So what the extensions do is, if you want flies flying around your sink at 5 a.m. This is very cool feature for your object, for your interiors. This is what one of the greatest MLO creator, Dark Overseer, no pixel dev, much like myself, used to do in his work. This is again a very cool, neat detail. You could use well, flags, really self-explanatory. Here is Sollumz again, very convenient and useful. You can select what it does. 512 for geometry animation, 1024 for YTD texture animation, etc, etc. If it's dynamic, you go to 32. It selects you 32. If it's static, I mean. So pretty self-explanatory. For your simple object, you don't have to select like literally anything. Again, we select base because it's not MLO. Time, again, if you want to show it at only at certain time. So base means like an object. Special attribute is for doors or object with bones, clocks, etc, etc. So again, pretty self-explanatory here as well with what it does. But we don't need any of that here, so let's actually go to my progress folder. Remember to save steps. Oh, that's embarrassing. Progress. So remember to save steps, especially as a newbie, it will save you a lot of time. So let's go to step 1 and just go to export our ytyp XML to that destination. And guess what? We do the same with our model. We hit A, meaning select all, then you go to V, export CodeWalker XML. What CodeWalker XML is exactly what I'm going to be showing in 1 second, but let's export it to the same folder as well. So now if we go to the same folder, and it's very quick export, we have YDR XML. Within the folder we have our textures embedded because it was our choice. And within our ytyp XML, well, we could open it with a notepad, with anything, but it's just a raw data I was showing you in OpenIV. We don't need to use it, okay? Okay, now the next step, converting it from XMLs. Obviously you can't use XMLs in any game, so you need to convert it to GTA format for GTA engine, for Edge engine. And again, it's criminally simple. So how are we going to convert our XMLs into GTA Rage format? You can go to my Discord channel where I have a link under tools and links to latest CodeWalker channel. It's a necessary tool thanks to DexFX and a bunch of other contributors for it. It will navigate to you to releases folder right here where you can just download the latest CodeWalker zip. When you open it from the archive, you could just gonna find RPF Explorer here. Just open it, go to your update folder, and from here you can just either shift insert, or you can just drag and drop them really. Now right here, it's really cool that you just open your ytyp, you see all the same data we just discussed. But what's really cool, you can go to your model and do some fancy things here. You can open your parameters here, you see your shader, your LODs here, if there were LODs. Under material editor, you can actually, texture editor, you can actually change your textures, create meat maps right from there, from embedded textures. Make sure to keep them power of 2, by the way, so 1024, 512, but never higher than 2K, never. Also, if you go to options, you can see if your collision is where it's at. It should be at the same place. And this most cool feature, if you go to light editor, you can actually create a light right here, actual light source, not fake light. And you go to right click, hold it, and drag it to create night, and actually just new light. And you are, it's not perfect, you shouldn't create your lights like that, but it's a good start. So for example, you see what your inner and outer angles do. You can see what your fall off do and what your fall off exponent do, your time flex to make it work only at certain times of day. You can make also your light like red, pink color, whatever, right? So it's a good start. And of course, after you're done, we can make the intensity, so how bright your light is, like 30, and make it work only during the night, not during the day, for optimization purpose, of course. And now you just save it under right here. Now you are free to close it. You shouldn't, I just showcase you that stuff, but if you don't want, you shouldn't do that, because now is the actual next part, how to make it work in CodeWalker. We're gonna need that to spawn the object in the game. Now we not actually need to have our objects, our ytyp YDR objects right here. Why? Because the game will not read them as such. You see, every add-on object you make, it's called add-on for a reason. It's above every other DLC already present existing in the game. So we have to create proper DLC for it, for game to understand to read it, or for CodeWalker in our case. So what do? We delete our models from here, and some go to mods folder, create mod folder. I work directly in update folder because I can't don't want to copy all of the DLC packs to mods folder. I just if you want, you just can create your mods folder, but what I do is I go to update x64 DLC packs, and I create my own DLC packs here, DLC pack here, literally by right clicking, new folder, DLC pack, test, Sollumz, tutorial, chair. I'm just trying to show you that name doesn't matter here. After you found it, just open it, and it's extremely important and crucial to create the correct hierarchy. Now you're gonna need to do it for every DLC you add into the game, otherwise your CodeWalker will not read it in the next step. So you create your DLC .rpf. This is just an archive how game reads stuff. Game consists of RPF archives, okay? So that's why I need to dump everything into the DLC archive. This is why it's the highest hierarchy. Within it, you create the x64 folder. Within it, you create the levels folder. Don't mind it very much. It's just Rockstar hierarchy. There's not much sense in it. This part you can remember versus understanding, all right? And after you create the levels, you create GTA 5 folder, and the last hierarchy is DLC archive as well. And this here, you can literally name it whatever you want, but keep it English. So we can name it whatever. And inside here, we drag and drop our objects. Now back in your CodeWalker folder, where you opened your RPF Explorer, you now actually can open your CodeWalker.exe. If your Windows throws you an error, like, oh, this is a virus, whatever, it throws that into everything. Just click OK, it's safe. Trust me, with CodeWalker, it's all good. And now let's just wait until it launches. And if you paid attention, you see how it's loading everything in here. And one of those things that is gonna load is your DLC that you correctly created right here. Now, if you go to top right here, you need to enable DLC and enable mods, considering with what you're working on. I have both enabled. Otherwise, CodeWalker will only need vanilla game, not your add-on DLCs. After doing that, you don't want to do this after every restart, right? So just go to options and save settings. So I don't want to explain how to use CodeWalker too much because it's super simple. Hold your left click, WSD to move, Shift to accelerate, T to open your toolbar because T stands for tool, pretty straightforward. C for cursor, easy hotkeys. These hotkeys are from Max, E for rotate, W for moving, but we aren't doing anything right now. This is a GTA map, by the way. We're not doing anything right now because this is just basically flying around, searching for stuff. In order to save something or create something, what you're going to be doing is opening your project window by either clicking on the first window here, real small on my 4K screen for some reason, or just clicking Control N. Okay, this is your project window. You always will be working through your project window. Now we're just gonna need to create new Y map. Why is it Y map file? Because pretty straightforward. Y is a rage format file, and map means it's standing on the map itself, not interior, not any interior, right? It's just a map object, exterior object, like a palm, like a exterior building, like a street light, dumpster, whatever. If it's standing on the street, if it's not within the building, it should be placed into YMap. So that's why we created a YMap object. Now YMap new entity. So we're creating new entity. Entity stands for object, right? Any prop, any object, it's called entity. We can rotate it, we cannot rotate it. It spawns alien egg by default. But our object name, if you go to F2 and copy it, is like this. Okay, so we see it with our pink light. Actually, it looks very great. So this green box is boundary box. Boundary box stands for render box. Actually, it's render edges. So it really is for optimization purpose, like always in this game, which is why it runs so good on even old PCs. Now you can rotate it like you want, but never scale it. Never scale it. Only objects without bones or collisions can be scaled. Now let's just place it over here because I know it should be empty here. Place it over here, and now let's learn how to save our file and stream to FiveM. Alright, FiveM is the most popular platform where you could be selling, buying, playing your GTA 5 multiplayer. These flags here are self-explanatory as well. What they do: static entity, our object is static entity. If you need it object is dark at night or whatever, disable embedded collision, they're self-explanatory, but most of the times, if you don't have some very particular goal, you just don't touch them. LG distance is how far will it load, right? The distance of its loading. Everything else is like position, rotation. It's pretty simple. Everything is automatic for you. Try not to mess with it too much. Your name of the YMap, let's actually name it. This calculates everything else automatically right now. So let's save it to the same place where we have our files. And name it actually tutorial chair Sollumz. Okay. After we saved it, crucial step, generate manifest. The manifest basically says this is an add-on DLC, not present in vanilla game. Please load object from that archetype, from that ytype, basically from the files we are streaming in the game currently. Place it on top and stream it into the game, into your server in this game. Generate, save it to the same spot. Okay, so now if we close everything we have here, we are left with ymap, ymf manifest. Ymap is world coordinates, where it's found in the world, and its rotation. Literally, not anything else you have to think about it. YDR is your geometry, textures, and collision. And ytype is your metadata of your object. Basically, it says boundary render boundary of the object, where it takes the texture from, where it takes the collision from, and animation if it had any. So literally the last step here to get it into your game is to stream it to your FiveM server. I will leave a link on how to set up your own FiveM server. It's not purpose of this tutorial, but it's pretty easy and it's crucial if you want to be a developer on FiveM. So you just go to your resources folder, you go right click, new folder, name it whatever you want, again, first Sollumz tutorial chair. Then you create a folder called stream, and this is why this part is called streaming to FiveM, because every single file we have just created goes into the streaming folder. And outside of the stream, you create this file called fxmanifest.lua. You can literally just text document, create it, but I'm gonna leave it in my Discord server, or you can just type it yourself. Really, it's fx version games GIMS. It is a map, yes, saying that this is mapping resource. Or again, you could just open my Discord, download it, Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V. It should always be present, otherwise it will not be started by your server. It will not recognize it at all, so it shouldn't be started. Okay, last part. You need to go back to your CFX server data master, go to server.cfg, and just have to ensure your folder basically started on your server start. It's called for Sollumz tutorial chair. Okay, once you have that done, you can just go to your server.bat or your FX server, depends on what you're using, and let's just open FiveM, go into the server and see if it actually works there and how it looks. Now that we are actually into the game, into the same spot where I spawned it in CodeWalker, we can see it standing right there. Let's observe it more precisely right here. So the specular parameters are quite, for metal, quite good, what you want to see, right? It shines. Bumpiness is, I think it's all right. You can definitely see it's not flat in any way. I remind you that it is unclimbable, meaning if I go and press space right here, I won't be able. Somehow I was able to overjump it, but I can't climb it. You see. This is why we set it up as unclimbable. But one thing I want to show you guys, if I shoot it, you can see all those bullets, right? All the bullet marks. But let's go into Blender and actually select our collision material. Let's make it no decal flag, which will make it not react to bullets. I really want you guys to show in game how this will look like. And also let's play with shader a bit more, because I cannot make a tutorial on every object, so let's play it with it more. Let's make it too much bumpiness. Let's make it even more specular, so you guys see what it does, etc. I want you guys to feel more comfortable and confident with shaders and how to work with them, alright? So let's now export it all again and check that it was in the game. Now that we're back into the game and go to the same object here, once we try to shoot at it, what we'll find is that there is no bullet holes. How cool is that? This is what no decal does. Also, you can definitely see more bumpiness, which actually made it look cooler. I was hoping for the worst, not gonna lie. But it is what it is. Now you see what no decal does, and this is actually the end of the video. Next one is gonna be on covering all the MLOs, Thank you for watching. Make sure to write down in the description, guys, what you think of the Blender versus Max, and if this video was useful. If you want to buy all these fancy assets except the chair, you can visit our Tebex store. For your server, we have weapons, we have fancy pads, and yeah, I'm gonna see you guys in the next video. Have fun, stay safe, join my Discord channel. See you soon.